What is it about you and sitting in boxes? It's a time of turmoil in the UK protective devices industry, with one player having gone bust and another whose future seems to be up in the air at the time of recording. What do you do when the equipment you invest in on behalf of your client no longer has spares on the shelf? I thought I was having a bad day on Friday 23rd of February when my livelihood was lifted from the back of my van by some thieving junky shithead while I was busy inside a shopping centre scoffing baked goods into my big gob, but spare a thought for the good folk at SBS Bespoke Consumer Units who are spending their day pulling down these shutters and switching off the website, a rather marvellous website that I know they put a lot of hard work into. For those not in the know, SBS built consumer units to order with an innovative interactive online board builder that allowed someone like me to easily design a consumer unit to order, which would usually appear the next working day all assembled and configured. SBS first popped up onto my gaydar back in January 2021 when they asked me out of the blue if I'd like to try their product. Now, the faithful followers who subscribe to my ramblings will know mine isn't a sponsored channel, so if I'm showing a product or service, it tends to be only if it's of interest to me and if I think it'll be of interest to you too. I'm happy to engage with manufacturers and suppliers, but you won't find me flogging the likes of Tradeify or Rhino Trade Insurance anytime soon. Incidentally, the former did once dangle a 4-figure sum to punt their product, which I turned down because the YourTradeBase software I pay monthly to use did a better job for me personally, while the latter have always given me a shit price for a like-for-like policy compared to Napit Insurance. And no, you don't have to be a Napit member to use them, so don't listen to what the influencers say, it pays to shop around. When SBS contacted me back in the freezing depths of January 21, I wearily raised my regular eyebrow, but then when I looked at the product, I admit I was somewhat impressed. SBS were punting a dual buzzbar system, which meant everything was true two-pole, including the MCBs. There were no untidy neutral rails or RCBO fly leads, and the board came configured to how one wanted it, saving assembly time out on site. It cost more than budget brands available from the wholesaler, but it was a clever and unique product and service that could command a reasonable value-added overhead. I had an opportunity to try out SBS's wares a few months later, shown in a video where an angry Eastern European builder wallops a crowbar at my wazoo, which took half a can of WD-40 to extract. And although I don't install many consumer units myself, I've done a few videos in the intervening years where these bad boys are seen getting banged onto the wall. There have also been installations that were never filmed, including the last SBS board I installed for a client just last November. One criticism that often cropped up, not just in my video comments but also on the likes of forums and on Twitter, was the risk of installing a product from a single source of supply. Buying the likes of Hager and Schneider ought to be a safe bet because they're big firms with a good presence, but buying a smaller brand or one that's locked into a particular online store or wholesaler can leave you high and dry if that source of supply goes belly up, as SBS now has. No doubt there are going to be a few I told you so's, but I'm all for the underdog, and where a product and service is being provided which is, in my opinion, demonstrably better than some of the dross being pumped out by the faceless big boy wankers, then I'm not going to apologise for taking a punt. I admit here, unfortunately, it leaves my past clients exposed if they need parts for the equipment I've put in, but I won't leave any of my customers holding their dicks in their hands if the shite hits the fan. If I need to do anyone a favour for any workarounds to keep their lights on, then so be it. There's already a community of installers getting together who also fitted SBS, and we're pooling our spare parts to help each other out. But for the I told you so crowd out there, SBS weren't fly-by-night. They'd been in the game for the best part of 15 years from my understanding, which gives them more heritage than the likes of other upstarts such as Fusebox and Verso. Besides, the big firms can be just as risky a bet as smaller operators, and conversely, smaller operators can seemingly succeed if they're aggressive enough with brand recognition and pricing. Permit me to provide you with some examples. Crabtree, an Electrician brand, was retooled between the 90s and 2000s. Then somewhere in the early noughties, Electrician dropped their Volex branded protective devices entirely to concentrate just on Crabtree and Wilex. At the end of that decade, they retired the balcony buzzbar configuration used in their Wilex boards and obsoleted their NSB range of devices, which means Wilex have been through an obsolescence program in the 80s, 90s, noughties and at the start of the 20-teenies, for want of a better phrase. So for all we know, they're due for a refresh again any time now, although I suspect they'll stay put. Remember the General Electric Series E? Plenty of these cocksuckers are hanging around my neck of the woods from the late 1990s, cross-branded with the likes of Sector, Ashley and Rock and Steeple, all long since obsoleted. And although Steeple still remain in the game today, they seem pretty wedded to Rexel's affiliated outlets, with their newer offerings not being of the same ilk as those previously carrying the name and logo. Eaton switched from MemShield 2 to MemShield 3 somewhere around the late noughties, yet their older range had Type A RCD protection 20 years before 18th edition Amendment 2 popped up demanding such, and they had the clever, flexible RCBO pod format, which their newer range dropped like a sack of shit. The Borg, that is Schneider, have been snapping up all sorts of brands over recent years, swallowing the likes of Clipsal, Merlin, Get Super and Square D among others, and excising those marks, at least from the UK if nowhere else. Clipsal, for example, remain a big brand down under, but on these shores they were retailed through the Wix chain until Schneider got hold of them. Although Schneider is a name behind a lot of defunct or regionalised brands, that's not to say something with Schneider's name slapped across it today is anything like backward compatible with the many marks they've assimilated over recent years. Legrand are very much still going, but they largely left the domestic arena nearly 20 years ago it seems, and while replacement gear is still available today, if you're lucky enough to find stock of any of it, its rarity commands the kind of price that means replacing a whole CU can often be more cost effective than performing a few simple swap outs. MK Sentry was all set to be killed off by Honeywell just 5 years ago, with a management buyout under the name of CircPro in 2020 being the only reason they're still around today, or at least that's my understanding. But if an international outfit like Honeywell felt MK consumer units and protective devices didn't have legs, then that's worrying, and for a time it looked like MK would disappear from the domestic UK market, which is fairly unthinkable. I remind you that BMW, owner of old British stalwart Rover cars since 1994, felt that brand had no future by the end of the 1990s, and Rover had a management buyout under the Phoenix Consortium in 2000, which kept the Rover name going until they became insolvent in 2005. Management buyouts are funny things, and you hope those close to running the show at the sharp end really can take control and turn around something that ought to work outside of the constraint of head office red tape. But you're also left wondering if the bean counters at that head office have clocked the writing on the wall and are making the right call in choosing not to just keep calm and carry on. A big problem when the vultures start circling is convincing World Plus Dog that you do indeed still have enough steam to regain confidence of the marketplace. Otherwise, failure becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's so far so good for MK, and we can only hope CircPro knows something Honeywell didn't, and that it stays that way. Click Skolmore are recent entrants to the consumer unit market with their Elucian range introduced in the last 4 years, but Click had already been on the market 20 years prior, so now they're back with a new product after seemingly being absent in that product space for over a decade. Of course, their new stuff and their old stuff mix about as well as ice cream and eggs, so you won't be buying an Elucian breaker to fit into a Click board of old. Yet those installing Click back in the mid-2000s probably thought they were big enough to be a safe bet for future-proofing. There are plenty of others I haven't touched upon: Protec, Niglon, Contactum, British General, CPN Cudis, Garrow, Luden, Chint. It's an endless list, but the point is most everyone has in the past obsoleted product ranges or have come and gone from the protective devices marketplace for one reason or another, meaning plumping for most any brand had the potential to leave you stuck for spares. Standout exceptions are few. The only one to really have any uniformity and general availability for 30 years plus, and probably always will according to their website, is Hager. Now, I know I've been giving Hager a bit of a kicking in past months on sore subjects such as some of their pricing and their ridiculous AFDD offering, but I've got to give them their due here. They're about the only brand I can think of where you can guarantee general backwards compatibility, at least back to the mid-1990s, and it's the only brand I'm fairly sure of who don't plan to change in the future. That's why the fanboys rate them. Although Hager do have a history of making some baffling decisions, here's something they got right. If Hager ever did change their buzzbar arrangement and lose prior compatibility, it would finish them as a brand. Other manufacturers have got away with it and might do so again in the future, but not Hager. It's their USP and they know it, and that's also their problem. Over time they got arrogant about it, which is what got the backs up of contractors such as myself. I knew they were a safe bet, but I didn't like their "fuck you, we're Hager" attitude. As for new entrants, one that seems to be doing it right is Fusebox, who only appeared on the scene around 2018 and who have managed to get a foothold into most mainstream wholesalers as the cheaper and readily accessible alternative to the Hagers and Schneiders of this world. Whether the quality is always the same has always been open for debate, but Fusebox have been so successful in eating everyone else's lunch that the likes of Hager have had to slash their prices, and I'm now paying a lot less for items such as Hager RCBOs than in previous years. Around 2021, Verso came along as another new entrant and, like Fusebox, quickly made a name for the brand largely by heavy engagement with social media. Now, I'm not privy to what's gone down at the time of recording, but by coincidence, at the same time SBS went under, something's gone horribly wrong at Verso because their lead guy has left the parent company and their website, when working, is showing out of stock on all products. Word here in the trenches is that Verso compatible protected devices will remain, whether branded as Verso or not, but it's squeaky sphincter time for anyone who has been heavily invested in the brand to date, I'm sure, and time will tell if they recover or not. But this kind of thing is massively damaging to consumer and wholesaler confidence, and it undoes all the good work to date that was put in to gain brand traction. The loss of SBS is unfortunate as they genuinely offered a product and service that was different. Everyone else, new entrants or not, aren't offering anything groundbreaking. It's just, here's our product, it's the same as everyone else's, it's not compatible with anyone else's, and we'll make it available for as long as we deem it to be commercially viable, unless the Schneider Borg cube drops out of warp for long enough to assimilate us into the collective. Now, I don't know, but I suspect that the fine folk at SBS were importers for the UK, and the product itself is a white label production from the Far East, who are probably still churning these products out for other countries under different brands. In which case, maybe they will appear in the UK again at some point under a different name if someone else thinks they can take on import and distribution. That might be naive of me, but few brands have a glowing track record when it comes to future-proofing. Hager and perhaps one or two others like maybe Crabtree Starbreaker and Proteus Gaia being the best exceptions I can think of. Even then, someone's got a video, I saw it somewhere, about Hager making their new AFDD incompatible with their pre-18th edition consumer units. I don't know. Manufacturers don't want you to stick a consumer unit onto a wall for 30 years. They want you to replace it after 10, and most anyone you choose to go with aren't a safe bet for the future. Brand churn, bankruptcy, design changes, or specific exclusions from installing new products into older enclosures, even if they do physically fit, all makes for a situation where none of them can truly be trusted. I'm on a bit of a flyer tonight. I've only got about 10 minutes until Electrician's podcast starts, so I need to rattle through these. I've got more names than I can possibly read out, especially on a video that's only about 12 minutes long, because following the theft of my tools a couple of weeks ago, there have been many generous contributors to the Let's Replace Dave's Tools Fund. And again, my thanks to Nick Bundy. I thanked him in my previous video for providing me with new Bosch power tools. I look forward to playing with those. I think pretty much everything's been replaced now, apart from the odd one or two bits. The only thing I was really gutted about was that little Hioki thing. That was a nice little tester. Chauvin have kindly stepped in and said that they have an analogue instrument that will do the same sort of job. So that'll be interesting when I get hold of that. Anyway, there were a lot of contributions. Thank you to you all. You are keeping me on the van and out of bed, or out of the pub, which I think is a good thing. Tomorrow morning it might not feel like that. But I am back in business and keeping calm and carrying on. There's more names than I can possibly mention in a 12-minute video, as I've already said, and I've only got about 12 minutes until the podcast starts. So I'm going to rattle through a few that came in before the theft. Excuse me. And don't worry, your name will I will get to it eventually. So, starting tonight, then, we have a whore, Marky D, who says Hager should be ashamed of that product. Obviously, he's referring to that Bluetooth AFDD thing. That would have been before my last video where I doorstepped them at Alex and didn't get anywhere. But yes, still problems with that product. Still more to come on that. It's just the subject that will not die, I'm afraid. Promotion to whore for, excuse me, Toilet Bug, who says, my mind is finally at ease that my Verso AFDD board hasn't been a complete waste of money after all. Well, let's hope that Verso have some life left in them at the moment, because yeah, it's all a bit up in the air following this video. Ahor, Darren Briddock of Electrical and Test Limited, who said, when I asked Hager to Lex, they dismissed your findings. Well, I presume that was perhaps at the Exeter show at the end of last year, because it wouldn't have been at Ali Pali. Yes, Hager said I was a drunken idiot, I believe was the words they used. So you can't argue with that, can you? Marvellous. But thank you for asking them about that, Darren. We have another whore, D. Greetings from me and my colleague, hard at work at an electrical site. Would appreciate a shout out of our names. Well, I've got my glasses on here. I want dash feel better, and no, I need a zeet. I might have been had there. But thank you for your contribution, and welcome to Whoredom. Another whore, DSESELECTRIC. Great videos, Dave. Keep them coming. Right, this has been very much a kind of off the cuff thing today, so I don't know about greatness, but yes, I had to say something about SBS because people keep asking me on social media about them, and I was one of their champions. I didn't buy a lot out of them, only a handful of boards, but then I only do a handful of boards. But as I've said in this video, damn shame. Good product, good service, good people. Mighty shame to see them disappear, and yeah, it's unfortunate. Oldest apprentice in the Northwest, whore that you are. I've just completed my MBQ level 3 and I'm now fully qualified. Oh, well done. You'll have to change your name, and you'll have to let me know what that name change is, because you're not going to be an apprentice anymore, hopefully, and you're going to be out there doing the do. So well done to you. Another whore, Derek H. Great AFDD face-off video. Shows how out of touch I am with the shout outs, because that's one that was released quite a while ago now, but more's coming, your name will be read out. 4 super wanks to read out. A virgin, Christopher Kingston 9601, who is a yellow super wanker. Welcome to the channel, Christopher Kingston. I hope you find something useful on here amongst the dross. A promotion to whore for Tresla J 1985, who is a green super wanker, and asked about what happened to the lady in the Karen video. I think I touched upon it a couple of videos back, where I said that there were a few things I regretted about that video. She wasn't a Karen, she was just nuts. I don't know if I've said it, but I did hear recently from her neighbour, who she had attacked on Valentine's Day last year, which was before she did us. Before she did us, she had form for doing somebody else. She's now been done by the courts, apparently, in January. So she has been fined for kicking the shit out of people, is my understanding. So yeah, she now has a criminal record, and I believe there's also something about she has a, what do they call it, that thing you get where you're restricted from where you can go. I don't think she can actually go to where her neighbours are in that street anymore. Not that she lived there anyway, but I can't think. It slips my mind what they call that. It'll come to me in a minute. Whore, Corvault Electrical, who is a yellow super wanker, and was saying how much he liked my Hyoki. Yes, I liked my Hyoki too. I don't know where that is now, probably with the rest of my hand tools in the bottom of a canal or something, because I'm sure that no one would have looked at that and thought, oh yes, that's a useful thing, I can get money for that. Either that or it's gone to a car boot sale or something, but yeah, a sad loss, but let's move on. And finally, a promotion to whore for Mathman0101, who is a green super wanker, and I believe is missing Nigel. Who? Don't know. I'm going to leave it there for the coffee shouts. Again, there are loads more to read out, but there are other videos in edit, longer videos than this, ones that are more worthy of having names read out. So that's all for tonight. I'm off to watch Electrician's podcast. If you haven't, then go tune in on YouTube. They're there 7:30 every Sunday night. It's now 7:25, so good night, and well, catch you in the chat in 5 minutes if you're tuning into the podcast. Boom, motherfuckers!